Hi everybody, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Lottie and today we are doing a particularly large unhaul. So I have done a little bit of clear out of my shelves and pulled off some books that I'm hoping to get rid of and offload because I have read them and I just don't think I'm ever going to reread them. They don't particularly appeal to me anymore. I just need to make some space really, so I've offloaded these books so that I can make space for ones that I am going to read and enjoy. I think everything I've got books that I have already read. I don't typically like to unhaul books that I haven't read yet because I do have that what if feeling in the back of my head all the time, like what if I do actually really love this book. So nothing in this little unhaul today is an unread book. They are all books I have read before and just been very meh about, to be honest. So we're going to dive straight into it. So first of all, I'm unhauling Flawed, which is a collaboration by a bunch of authors, and I read this quite a few years ago now and I did actually quite enjoy it. So it is a young adult contemporary about a group of teenagers who all get trapped in this lift and somebody in the lift dies. So they're all kind of connected by this event that's happened, and it's kind of the story of what happens to them afterwards. I can't remember exactly the time period it covers, but I think it's maybe like 5 years up to after this person has died and they're all stuck in the lift. So it's very much like kind of seeing how they deal with this thing that's happened to them, because obviously it's a very traumatic thing to have been trapped in this lift and then somebody to have died in this lift. So it was a very interesting story to see like kind of how these complete strangers like become connected in this way. But I just don't see myself ever rereading it. I did enjoy it at the time that I read it, but again, I think I can make space for books that I really truly love, and also it'd be nice to offload it so that maybe somebody else who is interested in reading it can then read it. I'm also going to be unhauling Once Upon an Eid, which is a short story collection by S.K. Ali and Aisha Saeed. I did enjoy this when I read it, but again, I just don't see myself ever rereading it. It is, as it says, it's a short story collection about Eid and Ramadan, and it was very, very interesting to read and I did enjoy it. It's a middle grade, but again, I just don't think I'm ever going to reread it. I would love to probably take this to my library to be donated because I don't see very many books like this at the library, and I think it's good for Muslim children to see themselves represented in books. So I would like to get rid of this from my personal collection just to give it to the library because, again, it's just the sort of thing that I think that would do really well at the library, and I would love for children who are Muslim to experience it, but also non-Muslim children to also see it, maybe pick it up and kind of learn a little bit about Islam and Ramadan and Eid. I'm also unhauling The Prairie of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, and I feel this is going to be a very, very controversial one, but I just didn't really enjoy this book. I think I rated it 4 stars, but looking back, I probably should have just DNF'd it or given it a lower rating at least, because I feel like I was trying really hard to like this book and I just didn't really care about it. I think it's too long for what it is, but also at the same time I feel like it needed to be split up a little bit more. I just don't think that standalone fantasy does very well in this kind of way, because it's like a high epic fantasy. You're trying to cram so much into the world and the story, and I feel like it just fell flat in a lot of places, unfortunately. Like I just couldn't really connect with any of the characters. I found it really, really difficult to follow. I didn't really get on very well with Samantha Shannon's writing style either, so I am going to be unhauling this just because I'm never going to reread it. I'm not interested in reading the sequel either, so yeah, I feel like it was overhyped and I just didn't care about it, and I'm just going to be glad to get it off my shelf, especially because it's so big. It takes up so much space, but I am disappointed that I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I'm also unhauling Gallant by V.E. Schwab, which again, I feel like is very controversial, and it's so strange. This is only the second V.E. Schwab book that I've read, and I absolutely loved Addie LaRue, but I just didn't really care about this one either. I feel like this one was too short, and I feel like it definitely could have gone more with what it was trying to do. I feel like this book is trying to cover a lot of different genres, so it just struggled to really successfully do any of those genres, and so I didn't enjoy it for that reason. And every time I see it on the shelf I just kind of think like, I didn't enjoy that book, I want to get rid of it, so I'm gonna get rid of it. But this is the really fancy Forbidden Planet edition with the really cool stenciled edges. It's got really cool end pages, and it is also signed, so I'm probably going to end up selling this on Vinted because I don't think I actually paid that much for it, but somebody might want it for their VE Schwab collection. So yeah, I'm going to be unhauling this one as well. I am also unhauling all 3 of my Kaylin Bayron books, which I feel really bad to do because I enjoyed Cinderella is Dead and I loved This Poison Heart, but this Wicked Fate has put such a sour taste in my mouth about any of her future books that I just don't think she's going to be an author I pick up from again, sadly. So Cinderella is Dead is a Cinderella retelling almost. It's about a society where they all kind of follow the fairy tale of Cinderella, and young women across the town have to go to this ball where they're matched up and then they have to get married. And our protagonist, Sophia, is gay, so she obviously doesn't want to marry a man in the first place, and I think she runs away from the ball into the woods and meets a witch, and then there's this other girl, and it's a bit of a romance in that sense. I liked this book. I didn't love it, but it is Kaylin Bayron's debut, so I feel like she was still kind of finding her footing when it came to the writing process. But I liked it, especially because we have a black main character, and it was interesting to sort of see the world that Kaylin Bayron had created. So, but I'm going to be sad to get rid of it just because I just... it's all because of This Wicked Fate, and I am gutted about it. So then we've got the This Poison Heart duology. You guys know I loved this book. I raved about it last year, and it would have been on my favourite books of the year list if it weren't for the sequel. So This Poison Heart is a strange one because it combines a lot of different elements that I think works very, very well together. So it's got a bit of like Greek myth retelling in there, but we've also following Briseis, who's the main character, and she's got this like plant magic, and she is adopted and gets a letter to say she's inherited her birth family's like old house, and they also used to do some sort of magic stuff there. It was very kind of like American Horror Story-esque when it comes to like Coven, I think, the Coven series of that show. But also I just really enjoyed the concept of it, and it was very mysterious, and I loved the magic as well and the way that all worked. But the sequel I hated it so much. It was just the complete opposite of this one, and all the magical vibes I had reading this book were just not present in this one. Yeah, and so it just put a really sour taste in my mouth, and it's just made me never want to pick up another Kaylin Bayron book again. I don't know. I just don't know. I just didn't enjoy it, and it's really made me sad about how I feel towards the first book because I loved this one. I absolutely love this. These again are sapphic, and I think my main problem with This Wicked Fate is all of the characters we met in this first book just felt very out of character in this one. They were acting almost completely different. I was like, this is just not what I signed up for, so I'm going to unhaul them because every time I see them on my shelf I think about how mad this one makes me and how it makes me sad about this one. I'm also unhauling The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw, which I think was a young adult fantasy mystery thing. I picked this up originally because it was sort of a book club book, and it was like one of the first book clubs I really participated in on BookTube, I think, which was a very long time ago. It's before I had a channel, but I just didn't really like it that much. I can't remember what I rated. It was probably something like 3 stars, but I think it's about a small town and witches and ghosts. But other than that, I don't really remember much about it. I'm never going to reread it, and I don't have much interest in reading more from the author either. So sadly, I'm going to be unhauling this just because I just have no feelings towards it, so I may as well just get rid of it. I'm also unhauling Eve and Adam, which is by Michael Grant and Catherine Applegate, which is a young adult sci-fi, I think, about this girl who is called Eve, and she has this access to this facility where you can create people, and she kind of builds the perfect boyfriend. I think she calls him Adam. I can't exactly remember the plot, but obviously something goes wrong. It was a very interesting concept, but I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more had I been more of the age that this is targeted towards, which, you know, is a teenager, and I think I read it around like 2020, 2021. So yeah, I just didn't particularly care that much for it, and I think it would do a lot better in the hands of somebody who could truly enjoy it instead of me keeping a hold on to it when I'm never going to reread it and I just don't have any particular feelings towards it. So yeah, I'm gonna get rid of it. I'm also gonna get rid of the Truth Witch series, which is by Susan Dennard. So I think that the actual name of this series is The Witchlands, and I read all of these books last year. I think it was 2 years ago now actually, for Witchlands Along, which was created by Jade, and it was a series I kind of had my eye on for a little while, and it took me a very, very long time to get into the series. I was kind of like the opposite of everybody else reading it, because I think with this first book I rated it maybe like 3 stars, and everybody else really enjoyed it, and as the series went on people seemed to enjoy it less, but I actually started to enjoy it more. However, I have no interest in continuing the series. I think there is probably one more book to come, and I just don't care to pick it up, which is really sad, because I remember actually really quite enjoying the 4th book, which is Witch Shadow, but I just don't think I'm gonna pick up the last one. This is an adult fantasy series, so there is a reason why it's been a little hot minute since this book coming out and the final book being released, and that's just because the nature of adult fantasy series, like, they just take forever to be released. But yeah, I just don't think I want to carry on with the series. I just don't have any particular urge to. And also, we have about 10,000 copies of this particular book in my library for some reason, but none of the others. So I figured, like, if I did want to read the last book, we will probably get it at work, so I can easily access it that way. I have no particular reason to keep a hold onto the physical copies of the rest of the series, which also kind of sucks, because I did actually have the first book on my Kindle, and I thought, oh yeah, I enjoyed that enough that I want to get physical copies of the rest of them. So I did. The problem is my paperbacks do not match the hardback of this. So if I was going to invest in acquiring physical copies of this series, I should have just got the hardbacks, but you know, hindsight is a beautiful thing. But yeah, I just don't particularly care that much about this series. My favourite book in the series was Sight Witch, which is the novella, and it was the only book in the series that seemed to actually explain what the plot is. And that's the thing, you guys, I can't actually explain what the plot of this series is. It's got like elemental magic, and the characters in this world can do different things. So the main character, I guess, of this one is a truth witch, so she's able to tell when people are lying, and at the time I couldn't really understand like why this was such a coveted power, why she was thought to be so powerful, and I guess it's because she is a very important tool for the courts in the world and for politics, because I guess if somebody has the truth witch in their possession, then she can be, I don't know, she can tell when other people are lying, so she can, I still don't really get it, okay? But the point is, the main plot of this series is really, really hard to decipher, and it's because Susan Dennard is not actually revealing to the reader what is going on, and it's okay when the characters don't understand what's going on, but as a reader, like, it's more interesting when you kind of are in the know a little bit. Becca in the books describes this series very, very well with kind of what Susan Dennard is doing, where she's kind of like not, I don't know, I can't explain it the way Becca does, but she explains it very, very well. So if you want a more in-depth explanation of like what Susan Dennard does with this series, I'd suggest watching one of Becca's videos where she mentions this series. But yeah, I'm just never gonna like carry this on, I think, so I may as well free up some space on my shelves by getting rid of 5 books. So yeah. Another series I'm unhauling is, what is this series actually called? I can't remember. The Folk of the Air by Holly Black. So we've got the Cruel Prince, the Wicked King and the Queen of Nothing. As you guys know, I didn't really enjoy this series very much. I read the Cruel Prince and thought it was very, very average. I tried to read the Wicked King and I DNF'd it, so obviously I've not read the Queen of Nothing. And yeah, I think it's because it is a YA fantasy series, so it's just not got those elements that I really, really enjoy in fantasy, especially fantasy romance, and yes, I am talking about smut. It's just missing sort of elements like that and the maturity I kind of like to read in fantasy now. So maybe if I'd read this a few years ago, I would have really loved it, but I just couldn't really get into it. But my main problem with it really was the writing style, to be honest, and I found the characters really, really unlikable. Like, are we supposed to be rooting for Jude because she is such a bitch? I think the only character I actually liked was Carden, and he's just a wet lettuce at the end of the day. So I am never going to finish this series. I may as well get rid of it, free up some space on my shelves and allow somebody who will hopefully love it have better access to it. I'm thinking I probably will donate these to the library. We have a significant lack of popular YA series, so at least full YA series, so I feel like this might go down pretty well at the library because they are pretty nice quality hardbacks. These were gifted to me by Jem from Bookish Gems for my birthday last year, and I'm really sorry I didn't love them, Jem, but I think she was kind of on the same sort of page where she just didn't really care that much for them. So yeah, I'm never going to attempt to read these again, so I may as well just unhaul them and give them to the library so some other teenagers can enjoy them. I'm also going to be unhauling The Book Eaters by Sun Dean. I read this quite recently, and I did actually purchase it quite recently, but again, it's another one of those books that I just didn't really care that much about. So this is a adult fantasy, but it's meant to be like a fantasy horror, but the horror just wasn't really there for me. So yeah, and I really enjoyed the world that was being established in this book, but I just didn't really, I don't know, it felt flat. It felt so flat for me, and I was very, very disappointed by that. I don't know if it's because I mostly listened to it on audio, and I did not like the narrator. Do not, if you read the audio for this, guys, do not, because the narrator is awful. She's got this really, really strong, I think it's Liverpudlian accent, and I just was like, why? Yeah, I just wasn't a fan. But the story itself fell a bit flat for me as well, so I just don't think I'm ever going to reread it. And I would definitely read from Sun Dean again. I just don't think I'm ever going to read this book again, so I'd much rather kind of probably take it to the library to be donated, because I think it might do better with other people. But for me, the fantasy and the horror just kind of never really reached their full potential, and as someone who loves fantasy and enjoys reading horror, it just didn't connect. So that's why I'm unhauling it. A little bit random, I have a bonus copy of Throne of Glass, so I'm unhauling it. There is literally no reason for me unhauling it other than I just want a little bit of extra space on my shelves. The reason why I have 2 copies of Throne of Glass is because I bought the first book quite a few years ago now, when I was first getting into reading fantasy at the level I do now, and I'd heard of Sarah J Maas from BookTube, and I thought I'll pick up the first book in her 2 series. I'd never read any of her books before. I was like, I'll pick up A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I'll pick up Throne of Glass, and then I can read them and I'll see if I like the series. And then it literally took me probably like 7 years to actually start reading the Throne of Glass series, and by that point I thought I'm just going to buy the box set of the whole series, so that's how I ended up with 2 copies. And this is actually the copy that came in the box set. However, I decided to annotate my original copy, which I wish I hadn't done, because that original copy is a little bit battered. Like, the foil on the cover has rubbed off a little bit, which I thought was strange, but I guess it's because I moved it to and from several of my uni houses, and so I guess it just rubbed off in the move, and also with age as well, because that actual copy is kind of old. In fact, let me grab it. So yeah, they're obviously identical, but the foiling has rubbed off a little bit on this, and also because this is a lot older, like the pages have gone a bit yellow from oxidization. But because I have annotated this, I figured I would keep this old version and get rid of my newer version. But interestingly, the recommended retail price of this book, exact same copy, they were just purchased at different times. This one is $7.99 and this one is $8.99, so that shows inflation for books, I guess. So yeah, I'm just going to get rid of my bonus copy of Throne of Glass because I don't have any particular reason to hang on to it. You guys know I'm a little bit iffy with the Throne of Glass series, so if I loved the series, I might consider just keeping like a pristine copy, but because they're the exact same edition, again, there's not really any particular reason for me to keep these. It's not like Crescent City where I've got like 4 copies of the same book, but they're all different editions, you know, so I'm going to unhaul this because there's no reason for me to hold on to it. So I'm also unhauling The Cat Who Caught a Killer by L.T. Shearer. Again, I read this quite recently, but I just did not really enjoy it very much, so I would rather get rid of it as soon as possible. There's a lot of stuff in here that just made me feel very uncomfortable when it comes to misogyny, homophobia, and the police, I guess, and the way some police officers probably think about people. But yeah, this was a contemporary mystery with a cat that could talk in it, and it was just kind of okay, and yeah, just all that stuff I mentioned that made me feel really uncomfortable. I just didn't enjoy it mainly because of that, so I'm gonna unhaul it. I don't really have much more to say about this book. I've talked about it quite a lot recently on my channel, so if you would like to hear my thoughts while I was reading it and stuff, go watch my Cat Books vlog, go watch my wrap up. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about this book anymore. And so the final book for this little unhaul is The Dalai Lama's Cat by David Mickey, which is it's a contemporary about the Dalai Lama's Cat, but it has very, very big Buddhist themes. There is a lot of Buddhist teachings in this book throughout as well. Good for somebody who is Buddhist, who is interested in Buddhism, who is looking to become Buddhist, but I don't apply to any of those three things. I read this again for a Cat Books vlog, so that's why I chose to read it, but it was very mid-tier for me. Like, it was very average. I think it got a 3-star, and it was also a complete, like, a straight 5 on Core so I just don't really have many thoughts about it. I don't really have a reason to keep hold on to it, so I'm unhauling it. So that is the unhaul. That's quite a lot of books, to be honest. I need to now sort them out to see which ones I'm going to take to work to be donated, which ones can just go straight to the charity shop. Maybe I'll put some on Vinted, I don't know. But yeah, that was it. I'm so glad to be clearing a little bit of space on my shelves. Still don't know what I'm going to do when my TBR cart ends up on my actual shelves, because I still don't have the level of space that I need for all of those books. But that's a problem for me later on. So that was it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please remember to give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. And I'm really sorry if I'm unhauling one of your favourite books, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. If you haven't already and you'd like to be, please do consider subscribing. I post a new video every single week. And that's it from me today, guys. Bye!